You know what I love about hockey is that anything can happen in a game. And in last night's game with the St. Louis Blues hosting the Calgary Flames, something happened that truly was remarkable. And it wasn't just the win, but it was maybe somebody that got some points during the win that you wouldn't usually expect during a hockey game, to be honest. I'm going to talk about this coming up here on Locked on Blues.
You're Locked on Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, I am going to talk about that win that the St. Louis Blues had against those Calgary Flames. I'm also going to be talking about the birthday boy, and that is Jake Neighbors, who turns 22 today. And of course, I am going to talk about my favorite Friday segment, Are We Feeling Blue? There is a lot to discuss on today's episode. I am so ready to get into the conversation. But first, I just want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. I hope everybody is having a great Friday. I know I'm on a little bit later than usual, which I hope you don't mind, but I am just so ecstatic to talk about the St. Louis Blues' victory over those Calgary Flames. They defeated the Flames last night 5-3, but there was moments in the game where I truly did not know if the Blues were going to win. Until that third period, I was a little bit hesitant to feel confident about the game, to say the least. I knew that this was a must-win game for the Blues because at the time I was thinking hypothetically, if the Las Vegas Golden Knights end up defeating the Jets and the Blues lose, then they're done. Their chances are done. Unfortunately, the Vegas Golden Knights did beat the Winnipeg Jets 4-1. And because the Blues did defeat the Flames, they're still 4 points behind the Golden Knights. But again, you can see how drastic things would be if the Blues did end up losing and the Knights won, then they would be completely out of it. So they're barely hanging on. They're hanging on. It's just barely hanging on. That's why these wins are so important. And on the broadcast yesterday, Jamie Rivers, I believe he said the Blues are 7-1-1 in their last 9 games. A really good record. Unfortunately, it just, it's one of those things where it's a little too late in the season for the record to be impressive when you really do need to win the rest of the games, if that makes sense. But nonetheless, it was a huge win that the Blues did have. There's only one hockey game on tonight, by the way, and it already ended. It was the Sabres and Devils. So tomorrow, huge game during the day with the Golden Knights and the Wild at 2:30 for us. Who do I want to win that game? I'm going to be honest with you, the Wild. I know what you're thinking. Hale, isn't the Wild another team that we don't want to win? And while that is true, if the Wild do win tomorrow, they have 79 points now. Then they'll have 81 points. So they'll still be behind. It's better than Las Vegas with 88 points or 82 points. So yes, you want the Wild to win. Not ideal, but you do. And then that's a game that I'm going to keep my eyes out on. Another game tomorrow is our game, and we're hosting the San Jose Sharks. So hopefully, if all goes well, we win, and we just keep on racking up them points. So, did I 82? I think we're 6 points actually behind the Knights, not 4. Either way, it's not a good situation. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the game and how we won because at least that's positive. Listen, even if we don't make it to the playoffs, I'm going to focus on the positivity and enjoy these last couple games because, I'm sick of being angry at this team and I don't want to be angry at the Blues. love this team too much to be mad. So in the first period, there was a beautiful goal by Zachary Bolduc, and he was assisted by Alexei Turchenko and Jordan Binnington, who got his second assist of the season. Binnington really made this play happen with a nice feed to Turchenko, and then Bolduc was able to tip it in. It was a great goal, and I got the Blues on the board. Unfortunately, in Blues fashion, the Flames got 2 goals back to back. So that wasn't good. So they left the first frame with a 2-1 lead over St. Louis. Then in the second period, like a good neighbors, Jake is there and he was able to equalize up the game with an assist from Robert Thomas and Colton Parayko. And this is Thomas's 51st assist, whatever math. And then Pavel Buchnevich was able to get a goal on the power play, making it a 3-2 lead over the Flames. Well, what ended up happening? Audrey was able, for the Flames, assisted by Kadri, I know, to tie up the game 3-3. Then in the third period, right away, Brandon Saad was able to get a goal. And what made this goal so good for me is that Saad keeps a streak going, 24th goal of the season. And our captain, Braden Shen, actually was able to put his stick on it. And then finally, an empty netter by Pavel Buchnevich. But guess who assisted? Torrey Krug and then Jordan Binnington. So Jordan Binnington got his 3rd assist of the season, 2nd assist of the game. It is beyond me that he ended up not getting a star because he did play really well in net. And he had 2 assists. And the stars went to, the first one was Jake Neighbors, and then it was Brandon Saad. But I was like, really? Like, he had a good game. And I guess, it's the NHL. They want to do what they want to do. But I was really impressed with how the Blues in that third period, they really played to fight. And that's why I love this team. I think that when you look at the St. Louis Blues and you look at all that they've been through, right? And all of the struggling and all the frustration, they genuinely do care quite a bit. So it was cool. Binnington became the first St. Louis Blues goaltender in over 30 years to record 2 points in the same game, by the way. The last time it was done was by Curtis Joseph, and he did it in 1993. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's kind of crazy, right? Pavel Buchnevich said after the game he should play on the forwards. I might have to have him on my line. Honestly, the thing is, and why it's so funny about Binnington, is because there's always a Jordan Binnington story, right? Every season there's something. Last year it was him and was fighting Marc-Andre Fleury. Like, there's always something with Binnington. And this time it's like a positive thing. It's like, oh my gosh, he got 2 assists. Like, he didn't try to fight anybody. He didn't hit anybody with a stick. Like, he genuinely had a good game. Like, who else can say they got 2 points in all these saves, right? So another thing, Binnington now has 3 points on the season, and the most by a Blues goalie since Brian Elliott, aka Moose, who also had 3 in the 2014-2015 season. So quite a story for Jordan Binnington. Unbelievable. Who would have thought? Like, when you think about, who would have thought that would have happened? Not me. That first goal, though, by Bolduc, like, Binnington really did make that play happen. And if you look back at it, I don't have obviously the footage here on this podcast, but if you take a look back at that first goal, like, Binnington set it up like 100%. So it just kind of cracks me up just a little bit because Binnington was able to say he had 23 saves and 2 assists in last night's contest. This is what Coach Bannister had to say after the game. When I look at the game overall, I thought we looked physically and mentally tired with some of the plays that we were making. They got us in trouble, and not to make any excuses, but you can kind of see it going through the room and how it affects today with the lack of energy. We still found a way to win the hockey game, and it's an important 2 points for us. Those are games maybe when you look back, when we struggled a few weeks back on the road, where we find ways to lose games. But tonight we found a way to win a game here. To what? Listen, I'm all about, respecting the coaches, but really, that's what you're going to say after the game. I just thought that was a little weird. Anywho, I'm going to talk more about the game and a player that has impressed me per usual. But first, I want to tell you about my friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only. Available to U.S. customers. Jake Neighbors is a name who everybody needs to know at this point because this player has been super duper impressive this season. And he's a player that honestly has just had just a beautiful season. So, Jake Neighbors this season has played all 73 games with 26 goals, 11 assists, and accumulating 37 points, which is really good. I love seeing Neighbors excel. He is going to be a true all-star. When I think about players on the Blues that I could see being the future of this team, Jake Neighbors is one of them. He's underrated. I feel like he doesn't get talked a lot about in the NHL as a whole because you're so focused on Connor Bedard. But at the end of the day, Neighbors is on that first line. First time in the game. Sometimes he's on the second line. But he is solidifying himself as a very valuable player. So why is it so important that the Blues continue to really utilize him? Well, he's so young. He has a lot of time left, right? 22 years old. And throughout the next, couple of years, he's only going to get better. He hasn't even peaked yet, if you think about it. I think Neighbors and Thomas play really good together. I think that they are I know that on the line there's three, but in terms of players, I think they're a strong duo. I think Thomas is like an older version of Jake Neighbors because I see very much like similarities in how they play. Except that Jake Neighbors is a little bit more aggressive by the net, and he's not afraid to take some of those shots where Thomas is the type of player that would pass it back. And again, whole other thing with Robert Thomas. I think he's super talented. One of the most selfless players on the ice, and I think sometimes he needs to be a little bit more selfish, which I talk about. Okay, so there was a play yesterday. Follow along with me. I think it was the second period, and the puck was right in front of the net. And Wolf, goaltender for the Flames, poke checked Thomas a little. It happens. But if he just had his stick down, was able to just, push it in a little bit, the Blues would have been leading in the second period by at least more than one goal. The reason why I bring this up is because I feel like Jake Neighbors is one of those players that isn't afraid to make those kind of aggressive plays. And I'm not saying that Robert Thomas is in any single way. I don't think Robert Thomas is afraid. I just think that Neighbors just plays a different game than Thomas does. And that's okay at the end of the day. I'm not expecting both of these players to play the exact same game of hockey. I just like seeing what I'm seeing out of Neighbors, and that is aggressive hockey without any fear, any worry, and just doing his thing. I think at the end of the day, too, with Jake Neighbors, and what makes him so valuable is that he's adaptable. You can have him on any line, and he will thrive. And I've talked about this before, especially at the beginning of the season when he was on that third line, the fourth line at one point. Any line that you put Jake Neighbors on, he will excel. And he makes the line better as a whole. So I do think that, you know, theoretically, Bannister puts Neighbors on the third line for tomorrow's game, which I know won't happen. The line will be a good third line. I think right now the third line struggles so much. I'm using that as an example because I like Kevin Hayes. I just think that his line struggles all the time. I think just having somebody with that kind of high, intense energy would be really good for that third and fourth line. Now, I will say that Nathan Walker does a really good job on his line, keeping up the intensity, but I do think that there needs to be more. And again, I like Bolduc, and I'm not coming at him and saying, oh, he needs to be better. Still a young kid, still developing. I mean, he just turned 21, but there's something really special about Jake Neighbors. And I think that as a fan base, this is something to be excited about. This season is not going the way that we wanted it to go. It's inevitable. But we do have a player that is really exciting to watch and will be here with this franchise for quite some time. So, just a reminder that while there is a lot of, frustration towards the season, if there's any takeaway, it's that we have Jake Neighbors and he's going to be here for quite a while. By the way, make sure to follow on Twitter at Locked On Blues or my own Twitter at Haley T. Simon. It is my favorite Friday segment, which means every single Friday I ask a question. And the question doesn't change, but the answers vary. And that is, are we feeling blue? This week, I have to tell you, I'm feeling a lot of things. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling excited, optimistic, a lot of emotion. I think for me, the reason why I'm not going to say I'm feeling blue is because there's still hope. And I'm delusional. And I know that. I'm coming on this podcast knowing I'm sounding delusional. I think that for me, until the Blues are officially out, right? I think that I'm going to continue to believe. And I don't know if that's, just me being in denial. Probably is me being in denial, if I'm being honest with you. But we went up again in percentage. We went from a 4.4% chance of making the playoffs. We have a 4.6% chance of making the playoffs. It sounds crazy. I know. It really does, actually. But we have a 4.6% chance, which means that every single day where we win, we go up just a little bit more. We're not out yet. The Wild are actually ahead of us. So that kind of sucks. But at the end of the day, I just really want to get into the playoffs. And I think the Blues, they do have a chance. It's just more of, can Vegas lose? Because if Vegas loses, right, then, well, you can say it, miracles can happen, but I don't think Vegas will lose. But I do watch these percentages every day. And the fact that we went from 4.3 to 4.4 to now 4.6 is showing me the odds makers do not think we're going to make it because we have yet to jump up 1 percentage fully. No, that kind of sucks, actually. Listen, I'm trying to be positive. It's not working out. But at the end of the day, too, I kind of figured that something like this would happen, that we wouldn't be making the playoffs this season. Now, I know it's not official yet, and I know I'm being positive and optimistic, but realistically, when Doug Armstrong didn't do anything this past summer, he didn't do anything huge or blockbuster like he said he would, that's when I knew, yeah, I don't think this team's going to be making the playoffs. I wanted them to, and I still want them to, and it's brutal going back-to-back seasons with potentially not making the playoffs. Like, that sucks. And it's upsetting. It's frustrating. It's honestly quite infuriating because they had plenty of opportunities to get some really good talent. They had a really good draft and getting Dvorsky, who I am really excited about seeing. He's been having a great season with the OHL. But the bigger thing is that if we want to be a playoff contending team, we need to not only fix the defense, but we need to fix that third and fourth line. And I'm not going to call players right now and make them seem like they're the reason why, because the ultimate reason why the Blues have struggled the way that they have, it's because of Doug Armstrong. Getting rid of Coach Berube wasn't a good move. I know that you always blame the coach when something goes wrong, but really, like, that wasn't the right move, at least to me, and it seems like to a lot of you people too, because we all miss Coach Berube a lot. And Bannister, while, you know, he's doing all right, he's not like the long-term solution to being the coach of the St. Louis Blues. And quite honestly, I don't think he's going to get a job next season being the head coach. Maybe they'll have him on staff or something, but it just, he doesn't excite me. He's not changing up these lineups to make it seem more competitive. It just, I don't know. It just seems dull. Maybe I'm just becoming negative, but am I feeling blue? As I said, no, I'm feeling more gray, where I'm not happy. I'm not upset yet. I think once they're officially eliminated from playoff contention, I will be upset. But I'm going to live in denial. And if that's a problem, then I guess that's a problem, because I'm just in denial about the whole thing, to be honest. So a big game tomorrow night, 7 p.m. against those San Jose Sharks. Hopefully an easy 2 points, unlike the last time they played the Sharks. And I will talk to you on Sunday. All right, I'll talk to you later. And like always, let's go Blues.